What's going on? Welcome back to another episode of the Indy Investor Pod. I'm Brett Snodgrass, the host of today's show, and today I'm sitting down with a good friend and business associate and attorney who specializes in real estate, Janey Hocker, and we're going to be talking about why it's important you need, number one, a real estate attorney, and what are some of the most common questions that a real estate attorney gets, and we're going to go through all the answers today on this episode. Let's get to it. And welcome back to another episode of the Indy Investor Pod. Again, I am Brett Snodgrass, and I'm sitting down with Janey Hocker. What's going on, Janey?
Hey, good. Everything's good here. We're just cranking along, staying busy, which is a great place to be right now. I'm very thankful for that. We're all very thankful for having the work that we have.
Yes, definitely. Well, I know that I've been excited about this show, and I love sitting down with attorneys. I always think like there's a couple of professions that are intimidating. It's like surgeon and attorneys. I don't know, for some reason.
Yeah.
They use words I don't understand.
Oh gosh. Well, when we're in our bailiwick, we can do that. But yeah, we're intimidated too. So
That's awesome. Well, we're just going to really just go over a lot of the most common questions today that a real estate attorney gets. And then I have some questions that I really want to go over. But number one, we're talking about Indianapolis real estate investing on this show. So we're gearing this towards Indiana, and specifically Indianapolis, which you are in Indianapolis. And
yes.
I've been working with you for several years now. You also have a title company, Hocker Title, and your company's Hocker and Associates. You have a law firm and a title company, and you guys are very successful. I think it's just been awesome, and I'm able to ask you questions and answer those. And I remember one guy, when I first got into real estate, said that if you're in real estate investing long enough, you're going to be in the courtroom.
Yeah.
And that was just something I was like, wow. I'd never been in the courtroom. I was like, that was a scary place for me to be. I'm like, why would I be in the courtroom? Am I going to go to jail? But just kind of got me thinking as a real estate investor, like how important it is to have a relationship with a real estate attorney. So why don't you kind of go over that? Like, why do you think it's important to just kind of have that attorney relationship?
Well, first and foremost, a real estate transaction is a legal transaction. Even if you buy the forms at Staples or online, and do the transaction outside of a title company and a bank, and really just do it yourself. I mean, those are still legal transactions, and they can break down. And at that point, you might find yourself looking for an attorney to, figure out a problem and help you resolve it. And worst case scenario, wind up in a courtroom. But they are legal transactions, and it's always beneficial to understand what you're getting into when you are entering into a legal transaction.
Definitely. I think it's good to be proactive than reactive. You don't want to try to find an attorney when you have to, because then that gets really expensive.
Well, it does. And unfortunately, that's kind of the nature of the beast sometimes in the legal, community, because we preach preventative things all the time, and we try to anticipate things through contracts and experience as to let's avoid that if we can and all that. But many times we're consulted after the transaction has already completed, or the documents have been signed, or the problem occurs. So it's not 100% that you're going to eliminate that, but obviously the more that you can do up front, you're going to be making informed decisions and calculating whatever risk that you may have.
Definitely. It's like going Christmas shopping on Christmas Eve. It's like, it's not a good thing.
No, you're going to pay more. You're going to pay more.
That's right. Well, I really want to just gear down to the most common questions that a real estate attorney gets, because I'm sure that as a title company too, you get a lot of the same types of questions that real estate investors ask. So I just want to kind of pick your brain. Like, do you have just some common questions that you get over and over again, and we can kind of answer those on this show?
Yeah, I'd say like probably the number one question that I get for especially someone that's just getting into it is, how can I protect myself, and how can I have no risk? How can I make this basically risk-free? And my first response is that, okay, in life, living is risk.
Exactly.
There's really no such thing as no risk. I suppose even if you stay home as a hermit and never do anything, there's still risk of some sort. But especially when you're getting into real estate investing, the whole point of it is that you're willing to risk something with the hope of a larger return. So I kind of just try to set people's expectations up front, is understanding that don't risk more than you can lose. I mean, and that's just kind of a old investment, advice, that it's not going to be the end of your world. And granted, there are some times that I suppose people do that. But in the big picture, really, you just have to be understanding as to the risks that are inherent. And real estate investing is relatively safe. I would say that's still the case. But you gotta have your eyes wide open, and it's not for someone that's just trying to do it to pay for next week's bills. I mean, I just kind of think that that's really important for people to understand.
Yeah. So it's a way to invest, and obviously, yes, there is some risk, educated risk involved with that. So that's number one. People ask you, I want to minimize your risk, and there's ways, and attorneys can obviously help minimize your risk and protect you if you need to be protected. And that's a great question. Is there any other kind of common questions that you get?
Yeah, I was thinking about today's podcast, and I was thinking, what are the things that people say is what's the benefit of a title search in a real estate transaction, and why can't I? Because technology has really advanced, and honestly, Brett, this is probably going to surprise you, but back when I first started, which
don't go there.
Actually going on 30 years ago, everything was done. The difference between the personal nature of the service and just real estate in general has just changed so much. Like everything was done face to face. I mean, purchase agreements were delivered by hand, face to face. The searching of the public records to find out what kind of liens does this property have against it was done in courthouses by people in different offices, literally blowing dust off books sometimes, to get to the information. And that process was just so personal. And so the title searching in and of itself has just evolved to the point that so much of it is online. So, and a lot of people that are, probably within the past 10 years think that they can get as much information about this property as any title company could provide because everything is online. And what people really don't understand is we are not there 100% yet, that everything is online. Even I, as a real estate attorney and owner of a title company, I do not do my own title searches. I use individuals that do it every single day, because just how everything is going online, there's more databases being created every single day. And I don't sometimes even know all the databases. Sometimes I'll contact our title searcher and say, hey, I'm confused by what this is, and where can you get that information, and why can't I find that information? I'm trying to look at it myself. And they're like, oh, well, you have to go to here, to here, to here to get that. So that's what people ask, is like, why can't I just do my own title search by looking online at the information that's available? And really that's why, is because it is a specific skill set, like a detective, that you do every single day, and you learn. You're in the industry, and you'll find out, oh yeah, there's a new database they're keeping track of, whatever this particular utility or this, whatever it could be, zoning or something, and they're going to be the first ones to know. And maybe eventually the whole public will know, but if you're closing tomorrow and you don't know that yet, that's something that is valuable that you think that you might not, need to have.
Yeah, definitely. I think this goes back to risk, and that's, to do your title search, that's pretty risk. I mean, you owning a title company that not even do that because you want to transfer your risk, right, to someone
I
else,
do.
what they're doing.
Yeah.
That's why we
They're,
use
they're
title
better
companies.
at searching than me.
Yeah. And people ask me too, like, hey, can we just quit claim this, or can I quit claim it to you? And again, it costs me more money for the title search and title insurance policy. But again, it's the risk, right?
Right.
It just takes one time to not make a week very good.
It does. And
Yeah.
and sometimes there maybe is a risk there that like, well, okay, if I'm only going to pay this much and
Yeah.
goes to, you know,
Yeah.
the dust, then that's okay.
Definitely. So people ask you, why do they need you? And technology obviously is changing things. So let's just talk about technology a little bit. So obviously with everything going on right now, this is even changing things more, making more things impersonal and online, more virtual.
Yeah.
So I always like to just to kind of gauge, technology has sped up so much, even in the past 10 years that I've been doing real estate.
Hmm.
This isn't where you were at, but I had to sign all the documents, mail them in, FedEx, make sure originals were done. It would take like 3 to 4 weeks to get the recorded deed back because it was all done manual and stuff
Right.
like that. So it's just sped up so much. But do you have any crystal ball of with title company or real estate in general with this whole thing and technology?
Yeah. I mean, so, probably, I don't know, within the past 10 years, definitely probably 5 years ago, we thought everything was going, you know, online and even closings would be done. I mean, everybody was talking about buying monitors in their conference rooms, and that's how you get your closing documents. And really what has really driven it, everything has basically gone online except for the lenders. Right now you record everything, e-recording. I believe the very last county in Indiana is now on e-recording, which is huge. That means, for those that don't know, that means that like you can be in my office signing a deed today, right now, and I can turn around to my computer, scan it in, upload it, and it's actually recorded. And there's definitely pros to that because it's all about like getting things of record quickly. But there's also, gosh, things can change really quickly too. Someone else could be sitting somewhere else and recording a lien at the exact same time as well.
Mhm.
So, but it's e-recording is online. We just now have gone to, remote notary, and that is brand new in Indiana. There was legislation that remote notary was supposed to be in effect July 1, 2020. Well, COVID hit, and this is governed by the legislature had passed the law, but it's actually managed by the Indiana Secretary of State. And so sometimes laws are passed, but there's no mechanism or agreed upon way to do it. And in this case, that was what was happening with e-notary. And we really wanted it to happen, but and we were just all kind of like, okay, July 1. Well, COVID hit, and then it was like, gosh, if we had e-notary, what that means is, you can be sitting where you are, and based on this transaction right here, I can notarize your document for you. And we are not in the same location. You could be in another country and I could do it as long as we pass, certain ID checks and things like that.
I like it.
And previously you could not do that. I mean, even if I know you personally and know what you look like, I just couldn't do it. So that whole process has been, sped up, fast tracked. And we're in the process basically of it just happening here, really any day now. So then that means nobody ever has to be together again. I mean,
Wow.
good, bad, or ugly. But the last piece of it, as I said, is the lenders are still requiring original wet signatures on certain documents. And we also still ship, believe it or not, we still overnight original packages back to lenders as of today. And with everything else going digital, we just have to think that, the lenders didn't want to close down on closings during COVID. They didn't care how things got done, but they really wanted things to keep moving because they were deemed essential. They were still doing a lot of, real estate transactions. So they were actually forced to kind of come up, I think, with some ideas as well I think that this has actually pushed, and we're going to see everything more digital, even from a lending standpoint now, whereas the original wet signatures aren't going to be, kind of where they were.
Yeah. Which obviously brings
Um,
up fraud. I mean, that's the biggest thing, I think.
Yeah, I mean, you do the best you can as far as like making sure
For
that the
somebody through a
person,
video and they show a license and like you can't see them very good. I don't know.
yeah, you can. Yeah.
Is that the right person?
You really have to have good, technology, and you have to make sure that you're looking at documents that they're signing and you're making maybe that's the right line, maybe it's not. I mean,
Right. Yeah.
the
No,
other thing, I guess the next step is what happens with just buying houses. I mean, cars already are all online. I mean, is that the next step where everything is online? And to me, that's really scary.
because houses are very unique. Cars. Yeah. I mean, you get a Ford Taurus. That's they got a bunch of them. And
Hmm.
yeah, the car industry definitely has changed. I mean, they have to price everything super because you can just drive down the street and get the same
Yep.
car. So that's just interesting. And obviously, yeah, this whole e-notary mobile notary thing, that's just really interesting. I mean, it really helped me. Literally, I went yesterday. This is during the COVID thing, pretty much. Indiana's lighting things up, but I went to Chase Bank and they wouldn't notary. They suspended their notary services. So I was like, what? Like I could walk into this bank, but you can't notarize my document. I'll throw it to you or something.
Right.
And then I went to a title company and they did it, but they came out to my car and did a curbside thing, and it was just kind of
Yeah,
odd. She was sitting in the rain, and I'm like, this is so weird.
I know.
And a mobile notary would have worked. That would have been perfect.
So you can actually do it in Indiana right now with a platform where we would actually have it. It's called eNotarize. And we're offering that right now, but like we're using their notaries. So it's convenient. You can get it done. Like you wouldn't have had to have left, but it's like $150 a document. So
$150
$150
a document.
per document.
I thought
Well,
that was,
not like, I mean, that would be like for a deed, but if you're doing a whole closing, it would be $150 for the whole closing.
it's still
But
like,
if you're doing one deed, yeah.
because typically,
So,
yeah, it's like what you go to a notary, it's like $5.
right. So what's changing is we're waiting for, we can actually do that ourselves. We don't have to, you know, sub that out, so to speak, to that vendor. But right now you can do it for, I know some people that are doing it just strictly for convenience.
Mm-hmm.
They can't leave their house, but they have a way to, do this, Zoom and all that. So they're doing it, but it's not something you would do on a regular basis. That's too much of a cost to add to the
Yeah,
transaction.
definitely. So that's kind of happening, and that's obviously things are going to get more impersonal coming in the future here. So let's talk about Indianapolis for a second. So I know Indiana, we deal with a lot of out-of-state investors too. A lot of out-of-state investors watch this show, and I want to just talk about Indianapolis and just what are some of the laws with Indianapolis, and can you talk about tenant laws? I don't know. Is there any type of tenant rights or tenant laws in Indianapolis that you're seeing happening that is maybe just a little bit different? That's more, unique to Indy.
Well, it used to be, I guess, that, we would say that Indiana and Indianapolis specifically was very landlord friendly. If you have a lease and the terms of the lease, set forth when you are in default, and you as a landlord would be able to take that to a small claim court and get an eviction and move on. I mean, you would be supported. If you didn't have a lease, but the parties were obviously, living there and they didn't pay, and you as the landlord state on a document under oath that they're not paying, that was good. I would say that we have actually kind of gone about 180, and we're more of a tenant friendly environment now. Certain things like, you can't be like an entity, an LLC or a corporation if you hold title that way and you're on the lease that way. I mean, they're going to require you to document in advance of your hearing who actually is able to represent you as a company, with resolutions and things like that on file with the court. It's a little bit more onerous because a lot of times landlords don't figure that out maybe till the day they're there, and they've wasted, it's all about time is money in that scenario, and they've wasted time and they have to reschedule the hearing for eviction. If you do not, if there's a controversy, I believe it's over $1,500, you're required to hire an attorney as an entity and represent you even in small claims court, which typically is used because you want to minimize the cost because it's not a great amount. But then with regard to, evictions, I mean, you have to make sure that you're following your lease and giving notice. There's also a provision now where, which kind of is helpful for landlords, because one thing that used to happen on a regular basis was that a tenant would receive an order of eviction, and they were not happy with that. You could move to have that transferred to the Superior Court. Relatively easy procedure. The tenant could go in, pay a transfer fee, like $75 or whatever the filing fee difference would be, and your case would go up to the Superior Court out of a small claims court. And it was really just, it was a delay tactic, and people got hip to that's something that they could do to give themselves, I mean, Superior Court's not going to immediately set it for another eviction hearing. It's going to buy them 30, if not 60 days. And then in that period of time, they didn't really have an appeal or anything to talk about. They just needed more time. It's really detrimental to the landlords. The law changed recently where an appeal is no longer available to the superior docket. You're truly appealing to the appellate court, and that just doesn't happen. I mean, not in an eviction. That's just kind of a unique thing in Indianapolis specifically, and in the state of Indiana at large. It's really more relevant in Indianapolis because we have so many township small claims courts. That's actually a good thing for landlords.
Gotcha. And also, I heard that with technology, with evictions, things like that, do you ever see that going virtual?
Well, all the courts are dealing with that right now. What happens in the future on that, I have no idea. Right now in Indiana, you can't file an eviction or a foreclosure because of COVID. But I was talking to some of the attorneys that have had, cases going on through this. I have some family law attorneys in the firm, and they've had hearings that have to continue. They couldn't just put everything on hold. I mean, so many things in the legal world they couldn't just put on hold, so they were still having hearings. And they were just saying how different it is to question a witness via Zoom as opposed to truly being in the courtroom and having that body language and the ability to kind of gauge their body language, and the seriousness of actually testifying under oath is maybe diluted a little bit when you have like a Zoom scenario. And we really rely on people taking that oath and really understanding that you are to tell the truth. And really, by and large, this is just something attorneys always talk about, is by and large, people tell the truth when they're sworn in the courtroom and they go to testify. People are just like, well, just lie. You can just lie about something, But really, people do not lie. But we do wonder, though, when you're doing it like this, we're losing something about that process.
Yes.
I don't know. I mean,
interesting. Yeah, I was just wondering your opinion on that. So.
I would hate to think that's the case. I mean, I love technology. There's definitely benefits of it, but I do think as a society, when all of our industries would be going that route, we're missing out on what makes us human.
Right. You got to have that interaction. Let's talk real quick. As we're kind of running out of time here, but let's talk real quick about Indiana borrowers and kind of foreclosure process. I just want to kind of hit on that. I've had some questions. We're doing some notes and some things like that. And Indiana is a sheriff, if a property gets foreclosed on, it goes to the sheriff's sale. So I kind of want to hit on that a lot of times if I'm a private lender and I foreclose on someone, you don't necessarily get the property if someone bids at the sheriff's sale. So I don't know. Can you talk about the foreclosure process? If you have a loan on a property and you want to foreclose on someone, how long does it take? How much does it typically cost?
Sure.
and just talk to us about that process.
Yeah. People always ask me that, like what's the deal with a note and a mortgage? Do I have to foreclose? And unless you've got a borrower that's willing to deed the property back to you, and you take a deed in lieu of foreclosure, yeah, you're going to have to foreclose to terminate that contract, that mortgage contract. And that's a court procedure in Indiana, and we do sheriff sales. So it generally happens, the beginning of it starts with a notice. There are some notice requirements in Indiana. You have to give them 30 days notice that they're in default, and you have to send some information about Get Hope and try to work this out. Get Hope is like it's a program in Indiana that allows them to talk with some credit counselors. And is there a way for them? I mean, home ownership is just highly, highly valued, I mean, all over the country it is. But there's just some states that have a little bit higher laws. But anyway, Get Hope, and that's that notice that we call to in advance of filing the complaint. You file the complaint to foreclose, and you're basically saying, look, they agreed to pay me this amount of money. And as security, they've pledged the real estate and the improvements, and they've defaulted on that. And therefore, I want to be able to have access to the real estate and improvements to sell them and satisfy my loss. They file the complaint, and they get, after you give the 30-day notice, so you're at 30 days already. And then you file the complaint, and they get 20 or 23 days, depending on how it's served. If it's served by sheriff, they get 20 days to answer. Many, many times people don't answer. You default them, and then you file for summary judgment of foreclosure, and then you wait 90 days. So you're basically at 4 months right now. Maybe a little bit more than 4 months. And you finally get your decree of foreclosure, and say they owed you $100,000. That included the attorney fees and everything, expenses, title work, anything that you've had to incur as a fee on this. And your judgment is $100,000. You take that judgment, or your attorney does, and you go to the sheriff and you say, I want to be in the next sheriff's sale and put this property in there. And you work with the sheriff, they set the next sale. Marion County has like 11 sales a year. Not all counties do have them every month. So you try to get in the next one, and then they will list that property for sale, and they'll say, what do you want to bid on it? And you say, this is where, you just have to kind of think these things through. Like, well, it's $100,000 judgment that I have. So you can bid the whole entire judgment. You can say, I'm going to bid $100,000. So that means the sheriff opens the sale, says this property is listed for sale with $100,000. If someone comes and bids $101,000, you get your $100,000 on the judgment. They get the property.
Can you add on as much money at this?
What's that?
Can you add on like more money than your $100,000, like attorney fees?
Yeah, you add on everything to get to your full judgment. The attorney fees that you've paid, again, title insurance, property taxes, maybe.
You can't just make up a number, right? You can't say, hey, just start at 150.
No, you can't. Right. No, that has to be based on your judgment. You can go less, because sometimes, and this is particularly true of like, big mortgage companies, they're not in the business of real estate. They're in the money business. So they may have a $100,000 judgment, and they're just like, nobody's going to pay $100,000 for this, but someone might pay $50,000. Let's put our judgment in at $49,000 or whatever. That's called so then they get their $50,000. They've just minimized their loss at that point. The property's gone. They don't have to deal with the property anymore. And then they have a deficiency of, $51,000 or whatever it is. And they can still pursue their borrower for that amount of money. And that's called a deficiency judgment. And that's when it goes back and the judgment's only partially satisfied.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think a lot of people think they're automatically going to get it back. Now that changes with, just the economy and how real estate is moving. I mean, there's definitely times when there were unbelievable prices being paid at sheriff sales. There were a couple of hedge funds that were coming in and just bidding everything way up. Now, it was crazy. But most of the time in my 25 years, the lenders would get the property back. And that's what usually creates your repo business, your HUDs and your, Fannie Mae's and all of those.
Yeah. No, just interesting. I've had a lot of questions about that lately, about the foreclosure process. So thanks so much for explaining that. I think it makes sense that on that. So just one last question. Any just kind of final words or mistakes that you see in real estate investors make when it comes to legal things?
Yeah, I mean, I think sometimes just know what your documents say. A lot of times people will, submit documents and everything's been signed and everything, and then I'll talk to them and just say, well, you agree to that right here in your documents. And I know that sometimes there's just excitement about getting the deal done and getting it signed, and we'll just deal with it later. But sometimes your own documents can hurt you. Know what your documents are, and then understand the financing of your transaction. It can be tricky with closing costs and taxes that are being paid in arrears in Indiana. Really kind of know what that means, because when you have tight margins, your closing cost or your tax prorations can really just blow that. And
all the time,
just kind of know what those numbers are and what your documents mean. If you have a question, call a real estate attorney.
That's right. We deal with that all the time. We'll sell a property for $100,000. We'll pay the commissions, the tax prorations, the closing costs, and then the team will say, "Hey, I thought we were making a certain amount, or we didn't make hardly anything." I'm like, "Well, that's the real estate game for you."
It's right. That's right. It cuts both ways.
That's right. Well, thank you so much for being on the episode today, the Indy
No
Investor.
problem.
I appreciate you so much, just answering our questions here. And I know that I just want to give your information as far as your company and where can someone, if they're interested in finding more information about you or your title company?
Yeah, I mean, HockerLawFirm.com and HockerTitle.com. Either one of those would get you to I have really great staff and really great people that work here, have lots of experience, and even if we don't do your deal, we're happy to give information out. So
sounds good. I always bounce questions off of you. I bounced one off of the other day.
No problem.
Real estate, you just run into things I never heard of.
I know. For sure.
So thank you so much for being on the show, Janet. Appreciate you.
Problem.
And if you guys are interested in reaching out to Janet or any of the Hocker team, I'm sure we would love to help you guys out. So thank you.
We're here to help. Thanks, Brett. Bye.